Welcome to Ask the Expert, a web series designed to provide you with practical information on business and finance. I'm your host, Nicole Pride. So, as you know, June, we are focused on entrepreneurship. And for this special episode, we are delving deep into the world of franchising. And we're so happy to have with us our guest experts today. First, we have with us Tamika Franklin. She is the founder of Precision Franchise LLC. Tamika is dedicated to guiding aspiring entrepreneurs and owning proven model businesses. She provides one-on-one consultations to help determine the best business model for your lifestyle and goals, making franchising accessible and achievable. Tamika is passionate about bringing these opportunities to women and people of color, helping them understand that owning a franchise or a proven business model is within their grasp. Thank you, Tamika. And we also have with us today Toni Harris Taylor, known as the networking queen and the coach that connects. Toni is a passionate speaker and marketing and sales coach and a 12-time author. She is the founder of Drastic Results Marketing and Sales Coaching, where she empowers entrepreneurs to get known, get connected, and get paid by leveraging branding, marketing, and speaking to attract clients and grow their businesses. So pertinent to our conversation today, Toni is a franchisee. She purchased a Network in Action franchise in 2019 and has since become a multi-unit franchise owner. Her accolades include being awarded the 2019 Rookie of the Year and the 2021 Brand Ambassador. So through Network in Action, Toni helps business owners grow through networking, education, community, and business development. And I just love Toni's mantra. It's also the title of her book, Show Up, Be Up, Follow Up to Blow Up. Okay, all right. Help us blow up, Toni. So we are just so happy to have both of you with us today. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm happy to be here. Nice to meet you, Tamika.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you.
So we'll delve right into it. So Tamika, tell us about your business.
So yes, you did such a great job with the intro. I'm like, oh yes, that's it. So yes, as you mentioned, I'm very passionate about educating and helping women and people of color understand more about the franchise industry. I try to make sure that I highlight businesses that are not what you would typically hear about or know about in the franchise industry. When most people hear about franchises or when they think about franchise, the first thing they think about is food. So I like to try to, I feel as though the problem is the lack of awareness. So that's the reason why I try to do things such as free webinars and bring on these different types of industries just to show them a little bit of an insight on the wide range of industries that they do have. There's over 60 industries of franchises and different business models that they can own. So I try to highlight that, and then I take them through the process, really try to understand what their goals are, their transferable skills, and then come back with some business that have alignment with them and just take them through that process.
So that's great. And so Tamika, you would be what we would consider a franchise broker. Is that correct?
That is correct. So broker and consultant is used interchangeably in the industry.
Okay.
So they mean the same thing, correct? And there's not a cost to work with us.
That's a great point for us to know. And so you're paid by the franchisor, is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. So nothing, so the payment comes directly from the franchise business and it has nothing to do with any payments that you're making at all.
So that's great. And so Toni, tell us about Network in Action.
Yeah. So Network in Action is an organization that brings business owners, nonprofit leaders, professional salespeople together to build community, connections, collaborations, coaching, and ultimately to get more cash. And so I bought my Network in Action franchise in 2019. It was sent from God because the week before, my coach asked me, well, why don't you start your own networking group? And I said, no, because I don't know what to charge. I don't know how to run a meeting. I don't know how to sell networking. I don't have technology, and I don't want to start from scratch. And the next week, Network in Action entered my life with everything, with a 6-figure business model for networking. And I was like, wait, you got the technology? You telling me what to charge? You telling me how to run a meeting? All I got to do is plug and play? Sign me up. Now, I didn't personally have the franchise investment. I didn't have the money. And he was like, how much do you have? He liked me. And from there, all those awards came, and I love it. This is my 5th year.
That's
And so
excellent.
that's how it came to me.
Yeah. And so there's so many things that the two of you brought up that I want to underscore just to make sure that we're all on the same page with our viewers. So let's just take a step back and explain what the franchising model is. So Tamika, can you discuss that business model?
Sure. So basically what a franchise is you're owning a system. So you are owning the rights to operate a business under a brand. So that's what basically sets it apart from starting a business from scratch. So it's still your own business, but there's an entire system, there's entire operations that you're able to step into. So that's the main difference of, what a franchise is. You can get a little more deeper into that as far as like every franchise have a FDD, which is a franchise disclosure document, but generally that is exactly what a franchise is.
Yeah. And so, Toni, you touched on that, right? So you were hesitant about starting a business and networking because you were just thinking about how overwhelmed you may potentially be starting a business from scratch. But that level of support that you were talking about, Tamika, is built into the process, right? So that you I don't know if this is a little elementary, but potentially on day one, can start to run your business because you have all of the materials and resources that you need. And so,
Absolutely.
and I don't think before our conversation, Toni, that I realized that there's even a franchise in helping businesses network. I just want to
I didn't
ask.
know either. I
Right.
was stunned. Now I know there's others that have entered the market since COVID, and there was BNI before. I didn't even know that was a franchise model. But so that was the thing. I didn't know there were low-cost, home-based, part-time franchises out there. And nobody is talking to us about it. Thank you, Tamika, for
I
being
am.
one. That's right. But so I'm with Tamika. We all know food service and storefronts. But what
Correct.
about the home-based ones that nobody has ever heard of? And so I too am a champion for us, our community, getting more aware of what's possible.
And Toni, I just want to clarify when you said that you bring business owners together, because we have part of our viewership business owners. This doesn't necessarily mean that they're franchise owners. It's just any businesses that could want to network. Okay.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
good.
And I run a in-person group. I live in Houston. I run an in-person group in Northeast Houston, and then I have 2 virtual groups. So my members I actually have an international. One of my groups is international. So I have an international group that I run.
That's awesome. So Tamika, can you share with us some of those categories? So we just talked about people mainly thinking about quick service restaurants and storefronts. What are the different categories, just to help us open our minds a bit?
Wow. So I would say like I'll start off with B2B because, just based off of some things that Toni's saying. So you have your B2B services, you have your coaching, you have anything dealing with business services as well, cost reduction, you have logistics, health and wellness, very popular, anything very popular is the home, like home services or anything to service the home. Cleaning, of course, automotive, just to name a few, fitness.
Yeah, sounds like the possibilities are endless. I recently, as you know, Tamika, we were there together, went to the International Franchise Expo recently, and I sat in on one of the seminars. I believe the company is Fran Data, and they do research on different franchises. And they said that the two categories that were growing and outpacing the economy was the health and wellness sector, and then also the quick service restaurants. And you know what? I said it's because everyone's so stressed out. They're either eating or they're doing self-care or they're doing both.
No, they're eating at the quick service and then they need to go to the healthcare, health and wellness to fix all that.
Fitness centers and yeah. So it sounds like the possibilities are just endless in terms of.
Can I add to that? May I
Mhm.
add to that?
Sure.
So I just recommended two of my non-franchise clients to buy franchises, and they both are, one closed last month, one's closing this month. One, she works at an airline, but she bought an ambulatory or non-ambulatory transportation for the elderly franchise. And the second one bought school fundraising franchise.
Wow.
And it's not popcorn and pizzas, it's a leadership program. I couldn't believe, I'm like, I sent you to the franchise people, and I'm like, there's a franchise for school fundraising? I couldn't believe it. And it's supposed to be a very lucrative business.
Mhm.
So for our viewers, now their interest is piqued, right? They're like, okay, let me look into this. So what's the first step, Tamika? If someone says, I want to learn more, I want to explore, maybe franchising is the right path for me. What's the process like?
So in working with me, I have a few resources that's available on my website. And if they want to have a conversation with me, a consultation, I usually tell them to go to first look at the questionnaire. And
What's
the
your
reason why
website? Tell us
it is precisionfranchise.com.
Okay.
And so the questionnaire, why I love that, it really does set the stage because it also allows them to not only talk about themselves, but it allows them to rate the level of interest in various industries. So they themselves get to go in and see like, oh, wait, they have vending machines. Oh, wait, and their interest is speaking. It's like, oh, well, if that's the case, I would rate this an 8. Well, I'll rate this a 9. So once they do that and we have our first consultation, it helps me as well because then I get to ask additional questions around why they rated something so high or industry so high rather, and why they rated something so low. Because sometimes, I want to get behind what their thought process were when they rated the industry. Because sometimes, they may see something like, I don't know, painting or pet care, and they're like, oh no, 3. So I would ask them more questions on that, and they may be thinking like, well, I don't want to have to, I just don't see myself painting, or I don't see myself, really working that closely with animals or something like that. And then I let them know, like, what most of these brands, you're not going to be the person that's doing it. So if your strengths are leadership and project management and things of that nature, this may be good because you're going to be leading a team that's going to be doing that. So that would be the first step. So when we have our first consultation, I get to understand, that's where I'm going to dig deeper and understand what's going on with them, where are their goals. And then and then I take that information and go back into my inventory where I do pull the different types of businesses, such as what was mentioned with what Toni just mentioned, and the reason why is because you come up with those ideas just based off of what the conversation was about. What are the things that they say they really actually like doing? There's a difference between what I do for work and what I actually like doing, for work. So I try to get that out of them as well. So I go back in the inventory, come back with some options, and we have our business review call. And this is where we'll be on Zoom like this. And I'll show them the different brands that I pulled out. And before, of course, I would educate them on particular terms and things that they're going to come across. And then we go through that, and I go through it on a high level at first just to get, where the interest lies. We pick the top, maybe like the top 3 or 4. And then from there, we move on down to the process, and let them understand that each brand is going to have their own process. But I then will normally join them, especially on the first call. I prepare them with resources, making sure that they're asking the right questions, and set up those calls to start the process. And then we go on to like the validation stage, the FDD stage. So I say this because I want also to let everyone understand it is definitely not an overnight thing. It is a process, and it should be. You want to take every step seriously. You want to not skip steps. You want to make sure that you're taking advantage and asking the right questions when it comes to the validation stage, where you're going to be speaking to other owners. And just again, you're taking it, it's just as much as important for them to understand that you're not just picking a franchise, you're not just picking a business to own. They're also choosing you. You're awarded franchises. So it's just as important that you are the right candidate and the right fit for them as it is for you. So yeah.
Yeah. And so you said there's so many things that I want to make sure we don't gloss over. And so the first thing what I heard you say is, there's so many categories. And so people should give thought to what industry that they want to focus in. But know that there's a difference between working in the business opposed to like leading and running the business, right? And so to your point, just because you have a quick service restaurant doesn't mean you're wiping down tables. You could sometimes be doing that, but you're really running the business, and you have a staff that has roles that are specific to the operations of the business. And then it sounds like to me, Toni, that's what was a nice fit for you in terms of purchasing Network in Action, because it was just a nice fit with your existing skill set, right? And what you were already doing.
Yes. So Drastic Results Marketing and Sales Coaching was my primary business when Network in Action came into my life. And in that business, I was teaching entrepreneurs already how to network. So Network in Action just became a complement to what I was already doing. So Drastic Results, I teach them how to. Network in Action, I give them a place to. Well, a lot of people can't afford my coaching, so Network in Action gives them a place to start. It was a perfect complement. And what I find is that when it comes to franchising, it's not all or nothing. In fact, existing entrepreneurs should consider a franchise to complement or for wealth building, to have an additional income stream that they can tie into the business they already have.
It's diversifying your portfolio. Absolutely.
Right. And so, Tamika, you really just talked about the seriousness of the process. So this is not something that you should enter into lightly, and particularly because it is a contractual agreement, right? So typically, how long are the contracts to own a franchise?
Well, once you actually own the franchise, I would say the majority of franchise, or what I have seen as average, is about 10 years. Yeah.
So yeah, you're going into a relationship for like the next decade at least, right? And so you really need to do your due diligence in finding the right partnership with the franchisor, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So
it's
you
a
mentioned
long-term commitment. It's like
right.
It's more than most marriages today. So unfortunately,
I know.
but it's serious. It is a serious commitment. So.
And so how long is your commitment?
10.
10, right. And so, Tamika, you have mentioned the FDD. Can you talk about what that is? So what does that stand for, and what does that entail?
So on a high level, so FDD is Franchise Disclosure Document, and it's heavily regulated. It's something that every franchise will have. You're not a franchise if you do not have a franchise disclosure document. A lot of people have that misconception when they see either maybe they just see that it's multiple locations of a business and they automatically assume it's a franchise. It's not. So you must have an FDD to be a franchise. It has 23 items in it, which is basically sections. And in each of those sections is going to tell you everything you need to know about the franchise. So, for example, you have item 19, which is the performance. That's where you're going to see the financial performance. So every item has like a whole, list of sections of everything that has to be disclosed within the brand. So you're not going in blind because everything is within the FDD, but it is a huge document. So this is why I always say you should have a franchise attorney, not just any attorney. But when you're going through the process, I always make sure that I align them also with a franchise attorney to consult with as well.
Right, right. And I heard someone make the analogy. So you wouldn't use, a marriage attorney for a real estate deal. Like you need a specialized attorney for that area of business. Right? And so, Toni, when you went through the process, what was it like for you? So you hadn't been exploring or investigating,
No.
franchises, the opportunity came to you. And so what was that like, as they tried to court you and you wanted to explore more? So,
Well, I didn't need to explore because of the way it came to me. I didn't have a franchise consultant, and I have been a entrepreneur for over 30 years before anybody even said the word franchise to me. And I just think that alone is sad, testament. And but anyway, let me say this: my franchisor is the best salesman ever. He always says, "Toni, you're better than me." No, I'm not. And so I did the FDD. I knew what I wanted because I had just talked about it with my coach, and wasn't a franchise coach, just a money mindset coach. But I had just talked about it. So I knew what I wanted. I knew when he brought it to me, it was what I wanted. But you have to have the FDD for, is it 15 days?
It's
Tamika?
14 days. So yeah, I was actually thinking about that. I was like, oh, I should have said that. So I'm glad you brought that back up. That's how important the document is. So
Yeah.
even if you're like eager and you're like, I know this is it, I'm ready, just tell me where to sign, you cannot. That
You
is how
cannot.
important it is. You have 14 business days to look that over and do your due diligence before you can move forward.
and that's
So,
regulated by the federal government, correct?
right.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so I took those 14 days and I talked to other franchisees. I made lots of phone calls, had lots of visited other meetings. So I went to some of the networking action meetings, talked to some of the members. And so I took that 14 days to do that due diligence. But by the time it was over, my training was on the 14th day because I was ready to go. And today he still says, "You're the fastest ever to launch in the United States." So I'm excited that it came my way. But in being in the franchise space, so I go to the big conference, the IFA conference. And the IFA conference, International Franchise Association, is held annually. And when I walked into the first one, there's about 4,000 people there, and probably 100 look like us.
It's that.
And I said, "This is crazy." And then there's, I would guess, and I'm just throwing the number out, but I'm thinking 90% is white and 85% of that 90 is white male.
So
there's
you're
still
on
not even enough females.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that is definitely another one of the things that pushed me as far as when I said to bring awareness and why I'm passionate about helping women and people of color is because of that. It's because of the statistics that I learned many years ago that was jarring to me. And then I ended up, in this industry. But I did learn that it was 77% white men in the entire industry. It's only 8% African American. But yet still, it is almost a 90% success rate. And I've always known in business that, you know, we all know the numbers. It's a 50%, you know, success rate when it comes to opening small businesses. So those statistics in itself is really what fueled me to want to work this business in this way. I felt as though, again, we don't know what we don't know. So I want to bring that type of awareness because, you know, if more of us knew more about this space, then more of us can come in and be owners. I mean, you can't ignore numbers like that. 77% white men, 90% success rate. So they know something we don't.
So, okay. So you make a compelling argument. So what are some of the things that people should consider, potential red flags for moving forward with the franchisor, or some of the things that lead to failing? There's a number of franchises that fail, even though the numbers are good. So what are those things that people should be aware of to reduce or mitigate risk?
Due diligence. You know, that's number one is the due diligence. Yes, they have the FDD. Yes, you can, you know, get the attorney and go through it. But even before then, you want to ask again. I think in between the process is where you're going to get a lot of your information, especially when you're speaking to other owners. That validation stage is something that I think is probably one of the most important stages because of the fact that you get to ask candid questions and get those candid answers that you're not going to be able to ask franchisors because legally there's certain questions that they just can't answer. They just can't tell you, you know, they can give you ranges, they can say what has happened, but if you're speaking to enough owners, you're going to get a more accurate picture of what's actually going on. So I think that is a huge part of it. Do your own market research as well. I like to say that, you know, you are an expert in your own, you know, local region and things of that nature. So take your own knowledge as well, as far as like what's going to work well in your area. Think about the industries that are doing well, that are more so recession resistant. I would say kind of, you know, stick to those areas. Start looking into, you know, businesses like that where you need those businesses, regardless as to what's going on in the economy, is needed. I think that's a smart way to go. Yeah, I think that combination of all of that is what's going to help mitigate that risk.
I would also add to visit their home office, spend the money, travel, and go to their home office, meet the leaders in person. I was fortunate, the home office for NIA, it was in Houston, but I would have traveled to meet the team.
Well, that's a
And
discovery day.
especially,
The discovery day, I apologize for discovery day, that is part of the process. And you likely wouldn't even have to pay for that. So go out and meet these people and do it on your own as well. Meet the people on the discovery day, but even additional franchisees, do that on your own as well.
So wait, what's the discovery day? Discovery date. What did you say?
I'm sorry, discovery day. So that is when it's like towards the end, and you are going to meet the CEOs, you know, the people, you know, home office and things of that nature, as Toni was saying. But normally they do fly you out, like wherever it is. They you know, normally they do foot the bill for that. And you go out and you get to see a day in the life. You get to see, you know, get to experience the culture and things of that nature as well. So that they usually call that discovery day.
And so, Toni, what was the tipping point when you spoke with the other owners, other franchisees, that you said, oh, okay, this is something that I want to do?
Well, so a franchisee brought me in. So she's the one that told me about it. So I spent some quality time with her. But then when I started investigating, I already knew 3 franchisees. Like, why y'all didn't bring me this?
Oh, wow. Already in your network.
Already in my network.
Okay.
And so it was
they were keeping it a secret.
Yeah, I know. And so
holding the information back.
But that brings something up. There's this assumption that Black people don't have money. And I will be honest, I didn't have money. I said that at the beginning, but we can find money. Right. And so there's this assumption when I talk to brands and I ask them why there's not more, they that's what they lead with, that Black people typically don't have money. And I'm
Mhm.
like, who told you that lie? Because we invest, we're professional, we got the same jobs y'all got for the most part these days. So we have 401ks. And so I think there was an assumption there as well. But I my due diligence was talking to people I already knew. I'm like, why you didn't tell me about this?
So let's talk about the financial investment. What are some of the upfront costs that you have to? I would believe every franchisee is different in terms of the amount, of course, and the interest
Mhm.
plays a role in that. But what are some of the standard investments that a franchisee would make?
I mean, so it does vary. It is a hard question to ask. And I do, before I go there too, want to say that sometimes the assumptions is also on us as well, on everyone who's unfamiliar about the franchise space, because when they think franchises, they think big, they think McDonald's, they think those
Right.
types of restaurants. So
Mhm.
automatically they're thinking, okay, a million and better. So they're not
Mhm.
realizing that that food, and restaurants like that are a small percentage of
Mhm.
the overall,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So the assumption sometimes is just that it's something that's out of their reach.
That's true.
So let's
That was my assumption.
right.
I
Most
assumed
people.
that it was all storefronts. So you had to have large investments. And it
Right.
wasn't until NIA came into my life that I realized, oh, so yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry, go ahead, Nicole.
Oh no, I was gonna say, so can you give examples of some of the lower end ones then? What does that look like? Yeah.
So the lower, I would say look at it by the industries and the type of businesses. And it
Mhm.
would be those that are home based,
Mhm.
those that are mobile.
Mhm.
That's where you're gonna find your lowest entry level.
Mhm.
I think the lowest I have seen has typically been like vending machines,
Mhm.
maybe some medical billing
Mhm.
type of businesses. So those tend to be the lower ends.
Now,
And
does that
even
mean
if
a
not
lot?
going to have a brick and mortar for sure.
Right.
Right.
So does a lower investment mean a lower return on investment?
No, no,
Mhm.
not at all. Because
I'll
if
give you
any,
my experience.
sure.
I spent, well, let me say this. I was able to pay off mine through referral fees. I actually referred 9 franchisees after I got in. So I was able to pay off mine. There's some creative ways too you can finance. But um my franchise brand is 19,000. For if you own one group, it's 19,000. If you own 3 groups, it's 35,000. Well, at 3 groups, when you get to 20 members, you're making 100,000. And you can grow those groups as fast as you possibly can.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
And
yeah.
so does that mean, so for your business, which is not the traditional brick and mortar, do you still have designated regions like if you were a brick and mortar?
I when we first started, it was pre-COVID and it was
Mhm.
all in-person networking, and I
Um,
had a territory. But
okay.
after COVID and we recognized we could do this globally,
Mhm.
now I have no territory. So I still have, for in-person groups, I have a territory to respect the franchisees around me.
Mhm.
But for virtual, I have members all over the world.
Okay. Wow. Excellent.
Awesome.
Okay. And so, what would you say to someone who is on the fence and they're not sure if they want to give up their 9 to 5? Those some of the things they may be thinking, right? I have a reliable corporate paycheck, which, it's not necessarily reliable. We know that, but these are the things that people say or think. You
Mhm.
know, why would I want to consider entrepreneurship? And then with franchising, you hear about entrepreneurs who feel like they may be too boxed in, right? They don't
Mhm.
have the freedom like they would if they had their own business to do whatever they want to do. They still have to, as a franchisee, operate within the brand and the brand parameters. And so, what would you say to some of those criticisms?
Well, you touched on a couple of things. So I would say, well, one, I would say that it's entrepreneurship in a whole, whether it's a franchise or not, is not for everyone. Not everybody is going to be, is going to want to do it. And
Mhm.
that's okay. You need to know whether or not, because to be an owner in the franchise industry, you have to be entrepreneur minded. You just have to be. Because at the end of the day, it is still your own business and you have to treat it as such. Um, as far as some of the other things, such as like feeling boxed in or anything, you would have to follow a process. You have to be coachable and you have to follow a process. But that doesn't mean that there's not autonomy within some of the businesses. It would depend on which business that you own. So I feel like there's a lot of times I'm like, well, it depends, but it truly does. It truly does depend. And I think Toni, is a great example because again, people who are in industries like their coach or things like that, they would never think that they'll be able to do exactly what they love, and it's a franchise. And I'm pretty sure Toni, you could probably speak more to it as far as like how you feel as far as following a particular process, and do you necessarily feel boxed in or not?
What's your
So,
experience been like, Tony?
entrepreneurship is not for punks, period. Point blank. I don't care who you are, what direction you go. But I also want to say I do have a startup business, Drastic Results. That's my own startup business. And let me
Mhm.
tell you, I've spent the same more money on Drastic Results than I spent on my franchise.
Mm.
So, but for me, what I love the most about my franchise is he gave us the meal. I can season it with my own flavor.
Oh, I love that.
Right. So I love my slap your mama seasoning. And I always say the meal was prepared, but I can take things off the meal if I want to. I can add to the meal and I can season it. And for example, one of my groups is a franchise supplier group. Everybody in that one group
Mhm.
supplies the services to franchisors.
Okay.
Well, I'm the only one in the whole system that has that group. So
Mhm.
Mm,
I had the
Mhm.
autonomy to create that. So I could create a Black entrepreneur group if I wanted to. And there's
Mhm.
some that have women only groups. One
Mhm.
of our franchises is the Cougar Connection, not the old women like in young men, but the Houston Cougars, University of Houston. So everybody in her groups are alumni of the University of Houston.
Oh, that's
So that's
interesting.
seasoning. That's,
Mhm.
that is not where it's so rigid. And my franchisor always says, y'all have autonomy to do what you want to do. I would do it this way, but do it, however you feel best for your community.
And I think that's cool. And I think that's part of the discovery process, right, Tamika? So during
mhm.
those initial conversations, you can get a sense of, is there room for autonomy, or are they more rigid, right? And so you learn the culture of the company before you enter into that contract, right?
Oh, you have yeah. You have it's a process. This is not something that's overnight. This is not something that you're gonna be like forced into or anything like that. It's definitely a process. So you're gonna know, especially by the time you go and meet, go out and meet the brand, like I said earlier, discovery day, you're gonna know by then whether this is gonna be something that's the right fit for you.
Excellent. Ladies, I thank you. This has been chock full of information. I'm excited to even learn more about franchising. And so tell us before you go how we can stay connected with you, how we can learn more about you. So both of you can share your websites, your social media handles, starting with Tamika.
Okay. So again, and thank you so much, Nicole, for this. And it was great meeting you, Toni.
You too.
Um, So again, I'm Tamika Franklin, and the business is Precision Franchise, and I am on all social media with as Precision Franchise on Instagram, and you'll be able to find me on LinkedIn as well. The website is precisionfranchise.com. I do host several webinars a month. So like starting with February, Black History Month, I would have a webinar featuring Black franchisors, etc., or there'll be some type of theme. So I do it for Black History Month. I do it for Women's History. There was a time I did it for Teachers Week where I did education brands. So I do these for several times a year, and they're absolutely free for anyone that is connected with me or in my email list. I have since expanded that this year launched a YouTube channel called Franchise Vibes.
Okay.
And that is where I extended the webinars that I have done and did more of a one-on-one, and where I would kind of dive into particular topics within business and franchise. So I like to say where we talk about franchises and everything in between.
Love
So
it. Franchise vibes.
Franchise Vibes,
And
VIBES, yes.
Love
and
that.
that's the handle name or the show name or both?
Yeah, Franchise Vibes. That's the
Okay,
handle name. Yeah.
excellent.
And the show name, yes.
Wonderful. All right, Toni, how can we stay connected with you, learn more about
Thank
you?
you. Drasticresults.com is my website. You can find me on LinkedIn, IG, Facebook, all under my name, Toni Harris Taylor. Don't just do Toni Harris, that's a football player. She's fabulous. But and then meet with Toni Harris Taylor. If you want to get a one-to-one with me and learn anything about what I have going on, meet with ToniHarrisTaylor.com. And I too have a show, a video show. It's called Marketing Strategy for Drastic Results, where I'm interviewing entrepreneurs, franchise professionals, and mainly about how they market their businesses. Because and this is another thing, even though you buy a franchise, you better be prepared to do your own local marketing. And that's one of the biggest complaints that people come up with franchising is they expect the big brand to do it for them locally. And that's just unrealistic. No brand could do that. So, and so I coach franchisees how to market themselves.
Excellent. Thank you, ladies, so much for spending time with us today. We're so grateful for all the information that you shared. So there you have it, folks. Another episode of Ask the Expert. Meet us next week, same time, same place. See you soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.